Good evening from Seattle. It is 6 p.m. in Seattle time, Pacific time right now. First of all, let me pay homage to the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And again, let me pay respect to Venerable Dhamma speakers. We have invited today Venerable Dr. Johnson Yet from the Kingdom of Cambodia to join with us in today's discussion, and also we have invited Venerable Kaspat on camera from Vipassana Turya Buddhist Center of the Kingdom of Cambodia. Also will be discussing today. And again, we have invited Sister Jenny Chim from Seattle, Washington State, USA. As today we are going to discuss the very special topic in order to commemorate the special birthday of His Holiness Samdech Brahma Sananda. So like before we begin our discussion, I would like to inform that this is the Buddha Sasana English program of the Cambodian Buddhist Monk Society in USA, presided over by Prihatimani Mansang, the abbot of Wat Manisitaram in the state of Minnesota, USA. And this program purposefully aims at propagating the Buddha's teaching, also the Khmer culture to the world, and especially to those who do not understand Khmer. I hope that through this slideshow discussion, our people, younger generation of Cambodian community, and also people all around the world will get to learn more about the teachings of the Buddha, and also the tradition and religious practices which contains in the Khmer tradition. And again, as we are making another important topic to cover today, we're gonna talk about the Sananda, his living message of peace. And I truly believe that some people might have been aware of his fame, his name, but some people do not aware yet, even for Cambodian people. So it is a great opportunity today that we are bringing up this topic into discussion. Hopefully our speakers will bring more awareness to the community, especially among our Cambodian youths around the globe, to get to know more about who is Samdech Sananda, what his work and what had he contributed to Cambodian society, Cambodian Buddhism, and also to the peace and harmony of the world. So we have invited our three special speakers, like Venerable Dr. Johnson Yet. He is the Vice Director of the Prasinuraja Buddhist University in Kingdom of Cambodia, and also Venerable just graduated his postdoctorate degree from the University of Harvard, and he himself has worked closely with Samdech Sananda, especially participated in the Dhamma Yatra, the peace walk during the late 90s. And also Venerable Kasapa and Jenny, they are the younger generation who had not witnessed Samdech Sananda directly, but they've been inspired by his great works through the readings, through the videos and documentary. As for myself, similarly, I also get inspired from the readings and also from the video, which I think this is a great topic to bring into discussion. You know, we can learn a lot from his life, and also we can take him as a role model so that we get inspired and try to walk on the path in order to help our community to strengthen the ability and also to work for the betterment of our community. Thank you again for the speakers for joining with us today. And without further ado, I would like to start the first question with Venerable Dr. Johnson Yet. Good evening, Pante. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for joining with us today. And before we begin to discuss about his living message of peace, I would like to ask you to elaborate a little bit from your personal experience and from your understanding. Can you tell us who is Sananda?
First of all, let me pay homage to the Noble Triple Gem and to Venerable Speaker, and welcome greeting to Jenny Chim, and especially to the Venerable Moderator. Mahakusananda was born in Takeo Province, in one of the poorest provinces in Cambodia during, I think, in 1913, but his date of birth is very controversial because I heard a story that if he asked him whether Samdech was born on 1920, he said yes. And if someone else asked him whether Samdech was born on 1913, he said yes. So a little bit controversial related to his date of birth. But once I came across the documents, especially his certificate that he got from India, it is said that he was born on 1924, and it is a long story. I deeply detail his biography, but I would like to pick up a few points to share with you all. Venerable Mahakusananda practiced meditation in Thailand for about 10 years and spent a few years at Nalanda University in India. But his work started in 1978, that, when he welcomed a wave of Cambodian refugees running from the war. At that time, there were hundred thousands of refugees just escaped the Civil War in Cambodia and started to settle down along the Cambodian-Thai border. And his meeting with the refugees, I think, in 1978 and later on in 1980. During the 80s, he preached the Sutra of Loving Kindness, and he started his work from that day on. And in 1992, I think he's led the peace march from Thailand, actually from Thailand, the border of one temple known as Wat Ko, located along the Thai-Cambodian border in the western part of the country. That his peace march started officially and had been known to the world. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, most honorable Doctor. Can you clarify a little bit, because I have read from some books like the Buddha of the Battlefield and Step by Step. You know, there are a few descriptions that foreign friends, they have called him in different ways. Some may call him as the living Buddha, as an Arahant, as, you know, as the pure heart, the most pure heart person, or the Gandhi of Cambodia, the diamond of Cambodia. What would you say about that?
He has been known to different peoples, and he had been called by different names. I came across one document that they wrote the names that given by him from his friends around the world. One of some people call him the Gandhi of Cambodia because of his non-violence practice, and some people call him a baby Buddha. I think this word baby from Buddha, yeah, baby Buddha. And one Japanese monk called him the wildflower. Wildflower in Cambodian means pukapre. Pukapre in the Japanese philosophy is something which is not polluted by the surrounding environment, and some people call him the man who doesn't speak but he acts. So many names have been conferred to him, but he himself I used to listen to his preaching directly and see his signature, and he write his name both with Mahakosananda and Vaya. But mostly, I think he prefer Mahakosananda because most of the documents that written or signed by him with the name Mahakosananda.
Yeah, I also read in his book that that name is like a title given to him after he got a PhD in India, and
No,
he no,
actually,
it's not true.
this is is confusing. Actually, the Mahakosananda is a Pali name. Normally, in the Theravada tradition, when we became the full-fledged monk,
Yeah.
or we got the Upasampada, the preceptor usually give another name. We call a religious name. So Mahakosananda is Nempanya, the Pali name given to the newly ordained bhikkhu. It is not the name that he got from Nalanda University. I also had discussed with some writers who say that actually it is confusing with that.
We should make correction on that point. Yeah, I just read that from the book.
Yes, yes. Nalanda University had never given any Pali name to him.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pante, for clarifying about this. And this morning, I also read from your message in Khmer language, like 11 points that describe about his unique and special characters. Like he is like the first Cambodian monk who is most well known to foreigners than to the Cambodian community itself. So yeah, is it true, Pante?
Yes, because his reputation seems to be on and off. During the 90s, he was very famous in the country. And later on, I think after 10 years, it seems that his reputation is a little bit going down. And this day, I think not many people know him.
Yeah, which is why,
because there has not been any documents, official document made about him, and only few books like the Buddha Battlefield written by Venerable Santidammo, the American monk who live in your state, in the
Sierra
state, and the other book is Step by Step, written by him, and I don't think that there is any other document.
The Buddha Wisdom and Compassion. It sounds like there is the book by that name, I think, but I'm not really sure.
But that book is written by someone, and they wrote about him a few pages and called him the one of the living Buddha, living God on earth. Actually, there is a mistake in my written too. He is considered as the one of the living God in the late 20th century, not the 21st.
Okay, I will make that. Yeah, correct that.
Yes, please correct it. This is my mistake. Yes, yeah. And
so,
there are few video documents made by one of the Western friends, Seren Life, and especially the video documents is all about the Dhamma Yatra. But the video documents, especially made about him, is Seren Life, and very short.
Yeah, I have watched that one too. And so far we have not, I think there is no Khmer writers wrote much about him or like to publish the book, but I heard recently you have done it, right, for your like research paper hypnosis at the Harvard.
Yes, I wrote about him 2 languages, English and Khmer, but it's still not yet published. Yeah, so hopefully it's coming soon.
yeah, we do hope it will be released soon so that we have the chance to read from your paper. By the way, how many pages is your paper?
200 plus.
200 plus is that sounds amazing. I mean, we can learn a lot from your experience and your knowledge in that. Okay, let me move back to okay, Jenny. Jenny is also a younger generation and also the first Cambodian American who was born in Seattle. Seattle, Washington State, USA, and she has always been inspired by the great work of Mahako Sananda. And sometimes, yeah, as we met at the temple, we somehow talk about, you know, the inspiration we got from Mahako Sananda. Sometimes we exchange the books to read about him, you know. So that's why I invited Jenny to share with us today. Well, as a younger generation of Cambodian Americans, how much do you know about Mahako Sananda? Can you describe a little bit from your experience?
Sure. First, let me just give my gratitude and thanks to the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And thank you all for inviting me to come and speak, and greetings to the venerables today. So I feel like I don't know much about him, actually. Just like Venerable Dr. Sangyit Yun said, you know, there's not very much written about him, and there's not very much documentations about him either. But I have come across the books that you have mentioned, The Buddha of the Battlefield and Step by Step, and those few documentaries that I find on YouTube. And I'm not a fluent Cambodian speaker, so I don't know if there's much Cambodian articles or books that are written about him, but if there are, I wouldn't be able to understand them anyways. But from my understanding today, even in Cambodian, there's not much written about him either. And so I feel like I don't know much, but it's because there's not much out there for me to learn from. But, you know, I discovered him, I learned about him only about 5 to 6 years ago, and I was on this self journey of like trying to heal myself from like past trauma and past hurt and pain, and it led me into my spiritual path, and it led me to the Buddha Dharma path because I recognized that, you know, my parents practiced Buddhism, and it was something practiced with my grandparents and great grandparents as well. So I knew that there was something about this. And I was trying to remember how I came across information about him. But I remember I just saw his picture. I Googled something, like I think I just Googled famous Cambodian monk, and an article from the tricycle popped up. And it was a firsthand account of somebody who assisted him when he came to America. And from then on, I was fascinated because I've seen images of Mahagasananda at almost every temple that I visited. And of course, things are written in Cambodian, so I don't understand, don't know who he is. But I was like, finally, like an English text or something about him that I can read about and study and just learn who this person is and why is he significant. Why is he so significant that there's a picture of him at every temple? And that's when I discovered that there's these books that the Step by Step and the Battle of the Buddha, or the Buddha of the Battlefield. And of course, I ordered them on Amazon. They were quite expensive, but you know, I just had to get my hands on it because I just didn't know how else to read about him. And yeah, I was definitely, I don't know what it was really, but when I read Step by Step, it was almost like the Dhamma finally penetrated into my consciousness, because before then I was still just kind of like, this is what my parents practice. This is something that Cambodian people go to the temple, they go do, you know, like, but I didn't understand any reasons behind it. I didn't understand the deep philosophy behind the Buddha Dhamma. But when I read Mahagasananda's work, I was just like, oh, okay, now I finally get it. I finally get why my parents practiced Buddhism, you know, my whole life. And one of the questions I asked myself when I was in this healing process was asking myself, who am I? Because one of the things that I realized and I recognized was that the past trauma that my parents experienced during the war, that was somehow passed on to me because they were coping, and so there were some things that manifested, and so I was dealing with, even though I never dealt directly with the war, I still dealt with the aftermath of it. And so when I was going through that process, I asked myself, who am I if the war never happened? How would my parents have raised me if the war never affected us? Who would my parents have been? You know, where would I be and things like that? So I asked myself, well, what does it mean to be Cambodian, you know? And here in America, what I was exposed to a lot was like the drinking and partying culture. And what I saw a lot was, you know, because of the drinking and the gambling and all that, there was a lot of anger, you know, that I witnessed as a child, outside of the home, you know, like at other people's houses. And when you're young and you witness that, all you think about that's normal behavior from a bunch of Cambodian people, because, you know, all the Cambodian people I met were exhibiting these behaviors and this lifestyle. So I was just like, there's got to be more to being Cambodian than this like partying thing, you know? And I was looking for somebody to look up to inspire me to live a different life, or to look at life in a different way. And, you know, when I read step by step in the book, he even answers the question of what I had, which was, what does it mean to be Cambodian? And maybe I'll read it once I find it here in the book. I have it with me here, but it just that's when it finally sunk in. Like, that's when I was just like, this is what it means to be Cambodian, because the things that he listed were things that my parents exude. You know, I always wondered why foreigners who go to Cambodia, they come back very inspired. They come back and they talk about how the people of Cambodia are so gentle and so nice and so compassionate, even despite the war, you know, even despite the trauma. That's what people got out of going to Cambodia. And I often wondered why. And so Mahagasananda answered that question for me. And since then, I've just been inspired to live his work, you know, like not take on his work, but like really adopt that, trying to be at peace within myself before I react irrationally outside of myself. And, you know, you try not to bring so much negativity into the world. And in order to do that, I have to work on being at peace with myself. So, yeah.
That's amazing, Jenny. And I remember, I think 2 years ago, you went to a meditation center at his one of the resident temple in Massachusetts, right? Can you describe a little bit of your experience going to that temple?
Yeah, I should have grabbed the paper, because the name of the temple is long. I can't remember at the top of my head, but I'll yeah. So I went again. When I went, I didn't even know that it was a temple that Mahagasananda had founded, or helped found. And so I got there. I was looking for some sort of peaceful retreat, and not necessarily meditation, but I just wanted to do some sort of retreat. And a lot of the secular retreats that I would find online, it would cost like hundreds, thousands of dollars, you know. And I'm kind of like, wow, for, you know, an industry that's all about helping people, they charge a lot to help people, and it didn't sit right with me. And it's funny because now I understand why. But I found Vipassana meditation, and it was kind of like, you know, it's all donation, so there's no like a set amount that you had to give or anything like that. But then I was like, no, I want something Cambodian. I got to find something Cambodian. I need to be around Cambodian people as I'm trying to discover who I am as a Cambodian person. And luckily, I found some information about this temple, and then talked with my husband, and I flew out there. And it was in the forest. It's in Leverett, Massachusetts. And so it's very wooded, heavily wooded area. It was the first temple I've ever gone to that was like this. You know, all the city temples are in the middle of the city and things like that, but I've never stepped foot in a forest temple before. And as soon as I got there, I mean, I felt so welcomed. Everybody was so gentle and nice. And I was just kind of like, yes, this is what I was looking for. And, you know, of course, because it's a Cambodian temple, the food was Cambodian. everybody who was there was Khmer. A lot of the elders didn't speak any Khmer, so I was forced to speak Khmer, even though I stumbled a little bit, but it's okay because, you know, it was part of the experience too. And it was only like 2-3 days after I got there when I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is Mahagasananda, like, because there's a big picture of him at the temple, or at the front of the temple, and I was just like, his work has inspired me. So I went, and even though talking was discouraged because it was a Vipassana meditation retreat, I had to ask, like, what's the significant, what's his role here? And so I learned that he had settled into Rhode Island area, the Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Massachusetts area, and that he had he formed a couple of temples here and there, but the people who shared with me information about him, they were directly his students. Like, they were still lay people, but they were directly his students. And I just remember at the end of my retreat, I was just like, wow, these people exude the teachings of Mahagasananda. They're extremely peaceful. And I talk about this with Bante Tevi about how there's a lot of misunderstandings about Buddhism in Cambodian culture. And I learned the real deal when I was there. I remember there was a lady who came in, and she had to be in her like 60s. And I remember her saying things like, oh, I prayed to the Buddha to help me better my life and things like that. And the monk there, he was like, Buddha can't do anything for you. It's only your own actions. You know, like, you do good, you'll get good good karma, or, you know, good actions, good deeds. And it was really hard for her to process that, because, you know, a lot of us think that we pray to Buddha, we pray to the angels and Deva to come and help us. And it was kind of, you know, I kind of sat there just contemplating what he was saying, but it was a shock. I can tell it was a shock to her system. She was so confused by it. And that was when I realized that there's a lot of misunderstandings about Buddhism in Cambodia. And so I wanted to learn what Buddhism is separate from Cambodian culture, and also how it intermingles and how it integrates with one another too. Because again, I also realized that to be Cambodian is to be Buddhism, and Mahagasananda says it right in his book. And when you realize how much the Dhamma is integrated into our society, you realize, oh, this is why my parents act the way that they do. No wonder they're so opposite of what I see here in America. And I remember even talking about anger with my dad. I was expressing to him about how angry I was with somebody. And he was saying, oh, you know, Jenny, you know, yes, that person is a very angry person. They must be really miserable. Would you like to live like that? I go, no, of course not. That would be miserable. And he goes, yeah, so don't be angry about it. And he was so passive. And I felt, I was only 12 or 13 years old at this time. So I was very young and ignorant. But I was thinking to myself how my dad, being an American, I was thinking about how my dad just couldn't stand up for himself. I felt like he was kind of like a coward in some sort of way, because he didn't kind of like want to justify himself or defend himself. And then it was only when I studied the Dhamma when I realized what my dad was talking about. Like, yeah, you don't want to get sucked into other people's anger. And you know, again, since then I've just been sucked in. I've been wanting to learn more about like the authenticity of the Dhamma, and learning the separate. But yeah, the temple at Leverett, Massachusetts was amazing. I don't know if they're doing the retreats anymore because of COVID, but I've even tried to convince my dad to go with me next time. I've convinced my husband to go with me, bring the kids with us. You know, I really enjoyed my time there. It was a great experience.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think it's great to hear from, you know, the community here in America, how you get inspired from his work, and how should we spread his message of peace, you know, to help relieve the trauma and the great suffering that we all been through, you know, as a Cambodian who who escaped, who fled to the countryside, to the third country. So thank you for sharing with us, and we will come back a little bit in detail about how his message of peace can truly heal the trauma that we've been through. So let me move to Venerable Kassapa. How much have you learned about him? I mean, as a younger generation, as a younger Cambodian monk, what message from Mahakosananda that get inspire you?
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Sir, and let me pay my homage to the Triple Gem and the Venerable Sir, especially Venerable Dr. Yong Sen Yet, the Venerable Moderator and Sister, the speaker, and our friends in them around the globe. Well, yes, I was young, and as you, Venerable Soktivi, and I got to know the Peace March, Thamayatra, honestly, from Venerable Yong Sen Yet when I went to Sri Lanka with him, and when we got a free time, he related to me different story, sharing his life experiences, and one of that is how he attended the Dhammayatra, but to be honest, he shared some funny story about the monks, about the nuns, but because I was young and I was in Sri Lanka, I studied there, so haven't got more attention or time studying about Most Venerable His Holiness Venerable Mahakosananda. But recently, when I came to Cambodia, and then to be honest, in the group of Dhammica Life, we discussed a lot about the legendary monks of Cambodia who sacrificed their entire life for the sake of the society. So Venerable Mahakosananda pop up, and to be honest, I would like to express my gratitude to Venerable Soktivi and to your team that invited me to talk on different topics. And at the end, so I got inspired when I heard like about the peace marching that he, it's amazing that it's incredibly amazing how did he do that led thousands of monks and nuns into the war zone, the battlefield, and one monk and two nuns were killed. I mean, in spite of that kinds of terrible situation, he was leading the people. He has much so confidence in the Dhamma. That is why in the step-by-step book, he used the Dhammayana is the best vehicle for us to travel. So to be honest, I haven't read much about his book, and I just got one book from you and about TV before the talk, step by step. So I went through the book, and I mean the most inspiration I got from him is the peace march, the Thamayatra. Like it's it's incredible. It's unbelievable how did he do that? Like he put his own life at risk, and thousands of monks and nuns, and combining in compassion and having a strong belief in Dhamma, and and that in the story of the step-by-step book, that I mean his compassion motivated the the leader of the Khmer Rouge, and that is he told the journalist that he was called as the friend of the enemy. He said no one is enemy, no one is friend. So even the leaders of the Pol Pot regime got inspired by his talk, and after his talk completed, the leader approached to him and asked, would you build a temple on the Thai Khmer border? How powerful his talk was. And recently I listened to his talk. I mean, during the Thamayatra, he gave a very profound teaching of Abhidhamma. For me, I mean, when I listened to his talk, when I listened to his biography, I started questioning myself, who am I? That I have kinds of little bit motivation, okay, like Venerable Soktivi, we have kinds of motivation to help Cambodians, to promote the name of Cambodian, to let others know. But when we look at ourselves, to be honest, we have nothing in comparison with him. He is a PhD holder, he is a great meditator, he can speak 6 languages. So I mean, wow, who we are. So like this is where I started questioning myself that what I have now is not enough. If I have kinds of motivation to help others, I have to be more, to be as peaceful. I have to practice meditation more. I have to study more. This is what I got inspired from him. So we have more to discuss, but that's all from me.
It is so true, Ante. That is so true. After I read a lot from his work, I feel that I am nothing. So maybe I cannot have anything much with this community. But anyway, I try my best to, live to his message, what he has left. Even, realizing that he could use at least 15 languages, I feel so astonishing, like what a man. That's why being a good leader, I think he must be the one who is very well equipped with knowledge, wisdom, compassion, and good conduct, and he's not just like this morning we discussed in the Khmer language that to be a good leader is not necessary to be a good speaker, but it's to be a good listener and to be a good practitioner, a good doer rather than a good talker, right? Well, let me move back to Most Venerable Dr. Yon Sinjit. Let me come to the message, as today our main theme is to focus on discussing about his message of peace, which inspired the whole world about his message of peace. And as we noticed that his main motto is peace is possible. So I would like Venerable Doctor to elaborate about this motto. What does it really mean? Peace is possible when he say it.
Venerable Mahakusana usually emphasize he said that something have to be started from somewhere. There must be a starting point, and he used to say that 1 million miles started with the first step. So I think this is a very Buddhist, very the way that the Buddha taught us with regard to do something, and it has to be started with somewhere, with some point. That's why he say peace is possible. Peace is possible by saying that this is his own words. I quote: "The suffering of Cambodia has been deep. From this suffering comes great compassion. Great compassion makes a peaceful heart. Peaceful heart makes a peaceful person. A peaceful person makes a peaceful family. A peaceful family makes a peaceful community. A peaceful community makes a peaceful nation. A peaceful nation makes a peaceful world." If we look deeply into how the religious founders in the world started their ministries, we can see that all those people started by first with themselves. For example, like the Buddha. The Buddha became a monk alone in the forest when he left the palace. And if we look at, if we talk about Jesus Christ, so Jesus Christ also start to say something unusual in the society. So he started to speak out, and Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, and all the enlightened people also always start first from themselves. And from this point of view, we can see that because the way that Mahakusananda teach peace is not something something very unique. Unlike in the political world, people have to play games, play tricks, and in terms of personal interest, people might smile at you, but in the real intention is not really a smile, it's a killing. Or some people start to kill you and they say, oh, because you have to be such and such. But in the spiritual world, we cannot fake things. We cannot fake things. Things have to be real and true. If we are spiritual practitioners, cannot be truth, cannot be honest with ourselves, we cannot share the truth with the others. So in order to have peace in the world or in our community or in our families, the person have to be peaceful first. And Mahakosananda start with a peaceful heart. For example, in our such a small conference with 4 speakers, if we don't have a peaceful heart, we cannot talk peacefully right now. There must be some anger, either visible or invisible in our hearts. So the peace is possible is something that Mahakosananda always emphasized, that it has to be started from someone's individually, so as to share this peaceful environment or peaceful practice with the other peoples and with the world. And I think this is true. This is true because in the spiritual world, the Buddha himself also say, if you cannot practice, please don't preach. It's useless. It's not effective, and it gain nothing from your preaching at all if you yourself have never practiced what you preached. That's why we say the Buddha is the one who practiced what he preached, and he preached what he practiced. That's why Mahakosananda stick to this word, peace is possible, and it has to be started from the individual. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Most Venerable Doctor, for sharing your thoughts and idea concerning with his motto, peace is possible. So I hope that our audience can now understand what he really means by that. And there are a lot of his quotes that I have read, but I think we cannot bring everything here. Just to continue on with some other quotes, he also has the quote like, when you make peace with yourself, you make peace with the world. It's like Venerable Doctor has already covered that this is truly a Buddhist way of life, that we have to build peace from individual level. Only then we can, ourselves being a peaceful person, that we can build a peaceful family, and a peaceful family will build a peaceful community, a peaceful nation, and a peaceful world. So okay, let me move to Sister Jenny, because you have been talking about, how you have gone through the trauma and fear, anxiety, or depression, being Cambodian, as we have the long past history of sadness and bitterness. But anyhow, you have found a way, through the spiritual liberation. So let me quote again his message, just like Venerable Doctor just was saying. The suffering of Cambodia has been deep. From this suffering comes great compassion. Great compassion makes a peaceful heart. A peaceful heart makes a peaceful person. Peaceful person makes a peaceful family. And then a peaceful family makes a peaceful community. A peaceful community makes a peaceful nation. And a peaceful nation makes a peaceful world. Maybe can you kind of, annotate something or give comment about that, like it sounds like step by step the way he give us the guideline, to how to heal ourselves from suffering, because we have been through a great suffering for, back in the history. So how do you apply that message into your healing?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if it's a natural thing, but we always look outside of ourselves when we are contemplating like the issues that we are dealing with, like the hurt that's been caused maybe by other people, by our environment, by society, and we look to like point the finger outside of ourselves, and therefore we look for the solution outside of ourselves. And it was this quote that really brought me down, because, or not brought me down, but it grounded me, because it's so easy for us to especially in this modern world where we actually, because of technology, we see what's going on all over the world, and we see so much tragedies, and we see so much atrocities that are happening. And so that feeling is overwhelming, and that feeling of overwhelm, that overwhelmed feeling can lead us to feeling hopeless, to feeling despair, to feeling nihilistic, like what's the point of all of this? And I don't know how or why it sunk in, but again, Mahagasananda's words are so easy to comprehend, right? Great compassion makes a peaceful heart, and then it affects you as a whole, and then it affects the family, and then the community, and the nation, and then the world. So he goes completely opposite. He doesn't go from the outside in, he goes from the inside out. And that's where I have been. I actually was involved in a lot of like organizations, and trying to like help solve the world's problem or solve the community's problem, and it got me overworked, and I began to neglect my children, my son, and my family, and my husband. And because the work was so overwhelming, not only was I neglecting them, but I would come home and I would be very just like exhausted. And so you can imagine I was very short with them. I was quick to anger. I was quick to just like, leave me alone, like just let me have some alone time. And I recognize, here I am wanting, to be more peaceful with to heal myself. But in this process of trying to fix the world, I'm actually hurting my own child. I'm actually hurting my own husband and my own family. So something was not working. And so that's when I stopped, and I just backed out of all of these organizations. I backed out of trying to help the community. And for right now, focusing on myself and focusing on my own understanding of what peace truly means. And one of the things I get out of his teachings too is radical compassion, because we often think that we all have compassion for other people, but when we think about somebody who's harmed us or hurt us in any way, we began to have negative feelings. We began to exude that hatred. And then to top it off, imagine thinking about somebody like Pol Pot or Adolf Hitler, and you're thinking these people are vile. But it's amazing that even that Mahagasananda preached compassion towards these people too. And it's something that it's very hard to comprehend, because as I mentioned before, my American younger self would be like, no, these people deserve punishment, deserve death, deserve torture because of what they did to the world. But Mahagasananda didn't preach that. He preached peace. He preached having even compassion for the people who've hurt you. And that's something that's extremely hard to do. And that's something that I have made progress, but I'm still working on. But I see the benefits of it. I have been able to lift many things off of my shoulder. And because I've kind of focused on myself and my own peace of mind and my own peaceful heart, my husband is a lot happier with me. My children are happier with me. And this makes me happy in turn too. So, I'm thinking there's got to be something to this teaching of his, like there's something to it. And so when I realized that my confidence in the Buddha Dhamma grew even more, because, Mahagasananda is a Buddhist monk. I know where he's getting his teachings from. And so that inspired me to get onto studying Buddhism a lot more. But the idea of radical compassion is something that is highly valued, but oftentimes it's, depending on who you talk to, yeah, you're going to be laughed at. You're going to be like, no, that's not the answer to solving the world's problem. That's not it. But if you actually sit and contemplate on this idea, I feel like it is the answer, but it's a slow process. But what Mahagasananda preaches too is that it's a slow but step-by-step process. And so, you know, that's one of the biggest thing that I've learned from him is it's okay to start off small. And, you know, when Mahagasananda was in Thailand for 9 years as the war was raging in Cambodia, and he knew, the monks knew that all of this was happening, and he still was encouraged and followed his teacher's instructions to stay until he was fully ready to go out there and yeah, at the right time. And, you know, on the outside, when you're thinking about it, you're thinking like, so he could have done something this whole time, but he just stayed and meditated for 9 years when he could have helped out earlier. That's from like the outside thinking. But, you know, this is, to me, when I felt like I wasn't doing anything, when I felt like I was useless in my community because I wasn't helping my community, I think back to that part of his life where he had to stay 9 years in his meditation, you know, retreat or his teachings. I think about that part, and I think about how hard it must have been for him to have to do it, but he knew that he had to do it. He knew that it was the right thing to do.
He cried from time to time. Yes, I read the book.
Yeah.
He heard the bad news happening in Cambodia. You know, his family, his relatives, all were dead.
Yeah, and it's something, you know, I can't imagine that. And I know many Cambodians, you know, have gone through it. And again, to see how he put all that work, how he put all that training into his work is very inspiring, because again, he never lost hope. And he was, and to me, it was like a matter of fact, I actually can do something about it. And he did something, you know, he brought.
That point is a great reflection, you know, like we all have learned, we should learn to be patient and waiting for the right time and right knowledge. I mean, how hard it was, if imagine for ourselves when we hear all our family were dead, were killed, you know, could you stay still at one place for over 10 years, you know?
Yeah.
Sounds impossible to us, but he could do it. You know, he listened to his teachers, his master advice. So he just, you know, find peace for himself first, because at that moment his mind was not stable. So his master realized that it was not the right time for him to come out. Even he come out, what could he have, you know, with this little knowledge, and his own mind was not stable, you know, so he must concentrate on stabilizing his mind first before he could go out and have, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a great reflection. I mean, thank you so much, Jenny, for this great reflection. And I just, you know, listening to you, and I was just looking, there are a lot of his quote that I think that's a great message, and I want to bring it out, just read a few. You know, one person asked him, how can ordinary people become peacemakers? And then he responded, just take care of yourself. Just love yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Then you are a peacemaker, because peace begins with you. If you don't know how to take care of yourself, how can you take care of others? If you don't have peace with yourself, how can you, you know, pass on the peace to others? So also another quote by him, if we cannot be happy despite our difficulties, what's good is our spiritual practice. You know, I think reflecting back during the Dhamma Yatra that he led, you know, people, you know, there were the description from different journalists who have joined in the Dhamma Yatra. They mentioned they never seen Mahakosananda, like, you know, like hesitation to walk on the peace march, and also he always kept smiling and very courageous and brave, you know. And they sometimes even notice, they never see him sad, you know, like this person is very strong, is very brave, he could be happy even amid the difficult times. How could he become so, you know, how have he trained his mind up to that level? That's why I think quoting his message, if we cannot be happy despite our difficulty, what good is our spiritual practice? Let me raise another quote his message again. So I will also ask Venerable Kamara to elaborate on that, because he was mentioning about that. No, I do not question that loving one's oppressor, Cambodian loving the Khmer may be the most difficult attitude to achieve. But it is a way of the universe that retaliation hatred and revenge only continue the cycle and never stop it. Reconciliation does not mean that we surrender rights and conditions. It means that we see ourselves in the opponent for what is the opponent, but being in ignorance, and we ourselves are also ignorant of many things. Therefore, only loving kindness and right mindfulness can free us. This is from his essay, The Human Family, that he wrote a paper to present in the United Nations, I think one of the conference held in the USA. So I think this message also inspired the world peace community. So I would like Venerable Gaspar to elaborate on that a little bit when some people accuse him for being, like kind or compassionate towards the enemy, because during that time people regard the Khmer Rouge, as being the enemy. But Venerable Mahakosananda said, we cannot heal hatred with hatred, right? We should only return with love. So let Venerable Gaspar elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so from his quote, and you mentioned earlier that we Cambodian, has been gone through a very deep suffering. So I mean, from during the war, during the Khmer Rouge war. So what happened is, to both sides were affected. I mean, the victims, Cambodian, they were hurt so much, they lost everything, and at the same time, on the other edge is the hatred that the military forces of the Khmer Rouge were killed, and the government and the military forces of the government were killed. So the hatred is there. So he knows the root cause, where he should put his compassion the most. So that is why he replied to the journalist that they need our compassion the most. That is why I came to share, I came to express my loving kindness and compassion, because he want to show, the thing is, that he want to show the Khmer Rouge leaders that the solution, the peace is not fighting and killing each other. If you want to make a peace within the society or within the country of Cambodia, you need to make peace. So to make peace, you have to be compassionate. And before being compassionate, you have to understand the suffering, that people are suffering, you are suffering. So suffering is not in terms of like losing someone, like hatred is a part of the suffering. So, that is why he decided, he put his entire effort to convince the Khmer Rouge leaders to understand that the peace is about that, and in spite of being, condemned and criticized by his own people, that he is a friend of the enemy, but he didn't give up. Because when he can stop that side, he know that automatically other side will be silent. The war will be stopped automatically. So this is that I can see that, as you mentioned earlier, and we go through different discourses by the professors in the world, that he is the greatest human being. And when I listen to a professor, Paula Green, that she has been a peacemaker for few countries, including Cambodia, but among the countries which she has been, she praised very most Venerable Kosananda, that he was such a great monk, and that how he deal with the the so-called enemies, that this is the way he used his compassion to make a peace within the society. But the most important thing is he taught us how to balance our compassion and our wisdom. But let me share this, that another thing that I got inspired is, he was so much like he has kinds of the ability or knowledge or capacity to convey the wisdom into very simple words. As Sister Jenny said, that I can say that he his sentences were so short, sweet, and simple. That is why his philosophy touched our heart so much. So this is the way of the Buddhist philosophy. So that's all from me, Venerable Supreme.
Thank you so much. While listening to you, I have found some interesting quotes. There are a lot of quotes in the book, The Buddha of the Battlefield, and they're so amazing. You know, I think people should read it. I just would like to recommend people, especially, you know, like those who would like to be a peacemaker or building peace for the community. They should read a lot of good quotes from Hako Sananda. It so inspire me. You know, let me read just one or two more concerning with what Venerable has just saying. He mentioned here in the book of the Buddha in the Battlefield. Okay. Okay, I just lost the track because a lot of pages I have been looking, you know. So it is so inspired, the message of peace and how we can, you know, heal the suffering of people who have the hatred. Here the quote says, "Don't struggle with people. Don't struggle with people, with men. Struggle with the goals and conditions that make men fight each other." So it seems like we have to learn to be equanimous, you know, not to take side. And we know that the killing is happening, and so we should not build the hatred and throw it at, you know, any person, because they're already in deep suffering despite their ignorance. That's why they cause this thing. So we should not hate people, but instead we should give more love, so that all people can heal. You know, everyone is in deep suffering, so we should try to give love and compassion to all, you know, regardless of the side. And okay, he said also in his paper, he said that when we accept that we are part of the great human family, that every man and every woman has the nature of the Buddha, Allah, and Christ, then we all sit, talk, make peace, and bring humanity to its fullest flowering. I pray that all of us will realize peace in this lifetime and save us all beings from suffering. Peacemaking is at the heart of life. We peacemakers must meet as often as possible to make peace in ourselves, our countries, and the whole world. And real peace will not favor east, west, north, or south. A peaceful Cambodia will be friendly to all. Peace is non-violent, and we Cambodians will remain non-violent toward all as we rebuild our country. Peace is based on justice and freedom, and so a peaceful Cambodia will be just and free. Our journey of peace begins today and every day. Making peace is our life. We must invite people from around the world to join in our journey. As we make peace for ourselves and our country, we make peace with the world. Gandhi has said that he was always ready to compromise. He said that behind my non-cooperation, there is always the needest desire to cooperate. On the slightest pretext, even with the worst of opponents, to me, a very imperfect moral is ever in need of God's grace, ever in the need of Dharma. No one is beyond redemption. A lot of quotes that I think can inspire a lot of peacemakers out there. So you should read it for those who are inspired by the message of peace. And let me move back to Most Venerable Dr. Yon Sujit. There is another inspiring quote from him. He said, "We Buddhists must find the courage to leave our temples and enter the temples of human experience, temples that are filled with suffering. If we listen to the Buddha, Christ, or Gandhi, we can do nothing else. The refugee camps, the prisons, the kettles, and the battlefields will then become our temples. We have so much work to do." Can you give a little bit comment why he said this and what does it really mean?
Mahakushmana always try to encourage monks to get out of the temples and to work with the human beings, especially with the people who are suffering. But Maha is very clever and smart. He know how to play the words. That's why he used these terms. Because in the especially in Southeast Asia, most of the religious figures usually stay at the comfort zone and preach. And if you want to learn something, to learn the teaching, you have to go and bow down and sit very low and with a respectful behavior, and then you learn the teachings. And your master is still living in the mansions, and you go out of the mansion and you live your life. But Maha has different point of view. He said that that is not the way, because the Buddha left the mansion, left the palace and live in the forest and work until at the end of his last minute on earth. So he preached, he used this statement to encourage, I think, especially refer to the Cambodian monks, because during the 90s, Cambodia was in a civil war and suffering was so immense. I witnessed with my own eyes. I see how difficult it was. You don't have when you get up, you don't have food on your tables, and you don't know when you got killed, because the war is everywhere and every day, every moment. Sometimes, the gunfire, the sound of gunfire becomes so simple to me. It's kind of firecracker. It's nothing more dangerous to us as a kids. Those days we did not have toys. We don't have toys.
So you regarded as a toy, the sounds of gunfire at the time.
We enjoy it, and when there was a fighting in our village, our parents just drag us into the bunker, and I always try to get out of the bunker to see the light of the bullets. It's flying all over in the sky, so it's so
like
beautiful.
In the movie. Sounds like in the movie.
Yes, and so Mahakosananda used this statement to encourage Cambodian monks, I think, to get out of the temple and consider the suffering of the people as a temple for them to live with, to work with, and to die with. Because in 1994, when Maha led a peace march to Thailand, at the time Thailand is a different part controlled by the Khmer Rouge, and you cannot go there. You have to fly somewhere. Completely, we cannot go there. And Mahakosananda led thousands of people to Thailand, I think, to meet the Khmer Rouge and ask for the end of the Civil War. Then there was fighting in Stau district, and Mahakosananda just, the both sides told, no, we cannot let you go because it was very dangerous. And from the government side say, like, if you could tell Khmer Rouge to stop fighting or shelling at us, definitely we are very happy to let you walk across the battlefield. And then Mahakosananda just walk alone into the battlefield and talk to the Khmer Rouge. And and very quiet, and he did not allow anyone to go with him. He walked alone. I witnessed that since with my own eyes, and thousands of people, 1,000 people just standing there and watching him walk into the battlefield, the ongoing battlefield. It was very dangerous. It is not movie shooting. It is a real world, very dangerous. He could be killed anytime. And I think his actions, his practice, his way of life definitely vary in this statement by saying that we should get out of our temple, the traditional temple, and walk into the temple of the human sufferings. And this is the Buddha's teaching. But unfortunately, I think it's not only in the Buddhist world, in in other religious world too, most of the religious leaders live in a comfort zone.
Yeah.
So this statement should be the main theme for all the religious peoples to look at it and reflect it. Is it true, or is it real that, or is it useful for us as a religious person to live in a comfort zone and take from this comfort zone to the suffering zone? So Marcos and I say you have to get out of your comfort zone and work for it. That is the religious preaching taught by all the religious leaders in the world.
Most memorable doctor, it reminded me about the title given to that book, The Buddha of the Battlefield, when you mentioned about when he walked into the battlefield, without fear and with strong courage, to walk alone into for the sake of the reconciliation or negotiation with both parties who are quarreling. So it reminded the story of the Buddha when he went to the ground of battlefield. In between that, he stopped the war from happening, at the Rohini River. It was astonishing. I think it's a great lesson learned from the Buddha's story, that he, take the sample to practice. And it's quite amazing how he could practice that, because he realized that the suffering of Cambodia has been deep. So if we just live in the temple, we cannot really kind of see the progress of our spiritual practice. Just like he say, when you cannot be happy despite your difficulties, what use is there in your spiritual practice? So when we come out there to really experience the human world, only then we can test the progress of our spiritual practice. What would you say about that? Yeah. Can you add something on to that about how the Buddha's teaching can really relate to the experience that we can get involved with the society when people are in suffering? How can we take the Dharma as a guideline to help them?
As a religious practitioners, I think that it's our duties to help the people to alleviate the suffering in whatever possibility can be taken. It is a must and our duties. And I think that Mahakusananda is mentally, spiritually very happy and very calm, but physically is not really, because I see him lead the peace mind in 1992. I think he was 60, in his 60s, in his late 60s. It's very physically very difficult, but he moved with the activists, with the participants, and without saying a word, and very always smiling and encouraging people. And I think this is if we desire for physical happiness, it is not possible for the religious practitioner. So it has to be, we have to endure all this kind of physical suffering because our way of life is very simple. We have to enjoy the simplicity of our life. If we cannot enjoy or cannot see the beauty of the simplicity of our life as a religious person, then I think it is very difficult to survive in this world.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Doctor. I think this point is it really touches me with his quote that we must find the courage to leave the our comfort zone and enter into the zone of suffering that people are experiencing. This is even amazing that the advice from the Buddha that when we truly see the suffering, see the arising of suffering, we can also put an end to the suffering. So there can be a lot of meaning and deep into it, but we just want to give comment to what Venerable Mahakosananda has left his message, and I also would like to quote his saying, from one of his conference in Kentucky, when people were discussing about anger which leads to suffering, and then they passed the mic from one person to another. They all were the religious leaders who were the peacemakers, and they were discussing about how anger leads to suffering. And then one person passed the mic to Mahakosananda. He was sitting cross-legged, beaming as he always does. He said, "When you know suffering, you know nirvana." And then he handed the microphone back. It was stunning, and it has stuck with me ever since. I don't think I understand it, but it stuck with me. This is a quote from one person who joined the conference that day, and he was just mentioning what really inspired him from the message of Mahakosananda. So that's why I just relate to this quote that we were mentioning earlier, that we Buddhists must find the courage to leave our temples and enter the temples of human experience, temples that are filled with suffering. So I would like to ask that to Venerable Kassapa also, because when I read this quote, it seems to me that he's a kind of monk who really engage Buddhism to society. Sometimes it's easy said than done when we say, okay, Buddhism engage society, but how are we to do it? How do we really experience it, and work with it? So Venerable Kassapa, can you elaborate something onto that? How are we going to engage with, the suffering of people, and how can we relate the Buddha's teaching in order to heal the suffering of people?
Yeah, thank you. To be honest, even we don't have so much, ability or capacity to do as His Holiness Most Venerable Mahakosananda. I mean, it is our bound duty. I mean, in today's society, in today's aspect, that we must, as monks, we must heal, the suffering of our devotees as much as we can, even one or two. And as Venerable Doctor said, that not just only preaching, we have to practice and just share what we know to heal them. And this is what they want. But fortunately, and to be honest, I'm very glad and very happy, because now I can see some young monks came forward to do something for our society. Came out of the temple, they teaching, they rendering some social services, and we have very good role models like Venerable Doctor, Venerable Kusupip. So I mean, this is what we want from monks. I mean, in order to contribute our spiritual services for the society, but at the same time, we must take care of ourselves. That is very important. We have to take care of our physicality. We have to take care of our mentality. It means that we have to practice as much as we can. We have to learn as much as we can, because we have to think that we are the light that will make others happy. That is my understanding. And from my point is that is why, to be honest, I keep practicing. And to be honest, even I have ability, to help one devotee in order to get rid of her suffering or his suffering, I will do that. And because I mean, in today's society, there are many people are stressed, depressed, and from the social, societal circumstances. So this is where the monk should play their role. And on the other hand, it is another respectation for Most Venerable Mahakosananda, that you must come out of your comfort zone and help the people as much as you can. And in different ways, it doesn't matter, as much as you are happy and your devotee and your devotee happy. So yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of the, traditionally how we practice Buddhism in Cambodia, and according to the Cambodian tradition, I think most of the time we always been in the temple and we like await people to come and seek for help, but we don't really have the courage to go out. I think this message really inspire us that as monks, as Cambodian, we see that the deep suffering has been there for our community. I think they really do need the help, the spiritual service from the monks. So if the monks just stay at the temple, doing nothing, looking them suffer, I think that won't have much. And reflecting back to that time during the 1990 or from the 1980, as we gone through a hardship from the civil war, killing field and so on, and also lots of lives of Cambodian have been lost, including the monks, and Buddhism was almost blanked as well from the country. Unfortunately, we revive it and get back. I think this message really inspires us as a younger generation of Cambodians, especially the Cambodian monks. We should try to build ourselves, equip ourselves with knowledge and good conduct and spiritual practices, so that we can come out and help our people who are in need of service, spiritual, mental health. This is so important message, and I believe, like Sister Jenny was just saying, she been born and raised here, and she couldn't really understand what Buddhism really means, even sometimes because of the language barrier. Approaching the temple, she could not gain any knowledge, why her parents and grandparents keep practicing Buddhism, what it really means to them, and how important to their life, until she later find out herself from reading, the English text and so on. So I think this is some, like shortcomings from our community as a Cambodian monk, how much we could grant the service to the community, not just staying in the temple and waiting for them to come and ask for help, but instead we should build the courage to come out there when we see people in suffering, go out and help. So maybe Sister Jenny can give a little bit reflection on that, like as a lay person. I mean, we three here are monks, so sometimes it may not be fair when we talk from our perspective, but let's look back from the perspective of a lay person. How would you expect the monk to do, in terms of spiritual guidance to the people? Will the monk, just conduct the services or ceremony at the temple, or should we go out and help people? What is your idea?
I think it's good to do both. It's good to be able to step out and be in community, because like I've mentioned before, many of us that were born in America, it's very uncomfortable to speak to monks, because we know that there's a formal way to speak to monks. And for some of us, we've been scolded by parents or elders for not speaking correctly. And, it's if we don't speak correctly, we tuk bap. And it's just like, if I'm going to sin just by talking to a monk, then I don't want to talk to a monk. And so it was actually the encouragement of Bang Devi here, and also other monks from other countries that encourage that, like, you can speak to us like normal people. And at first it was a little uncomfortable, just to get used to it, but now it's a lot easier, and I'm so glad that I kind of got over that nerve, because I've gained so much just from being able to speak to monks and just being able to like participate in what's going on at the temples. I do know that like the Theravada Buddhist practice is actually growing, and there's a lot of like white American monks that are white Americans that have taken an interest in this, and they've gone to Thailand to become monks. And I know of one monastery, I think it's in New Jersey or New Hampshire, Empty Clouds Monastery.
Yeah.
And for their alms round, they actually go out into the community. They go to a farmer's market and they ask for alms there, and for me, I'm just like, what? Our monks don't even do that. And I think it would be kind of cool. I don't know, just to not only are they
it is the Buddha's obligation to go for alms round. It's a way of like giving opportunity for people to do charity and also to get to know the the life of people as well, to witness that. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and I think imagine the curiosity, for people who've never seen a monk before. And I remember when I grew up knowing of Buddhism, I grew up Theravada, in the Theravada Buddhist tradition, and I didn't know that there were other traditions that were practiced. And so as I was learning about Buddhism in general, I kept on coming across Mahayana. And Mahayana Buddhists, monks, they dress differently, and everything like that. I was like, this is different. Like, like it makes me more curious about it as well. And then it was, something finally sunk in. I was just like, oh, we Cambodians practice the Theravada tradition. Okay, now I got to figure out, like, what does that mean and what's the difference? And yeah, and I don't know, it just sparks an interest and a curiosity. And to me, that's such an organic way to talk about Buddhism as well. It's an organic way to bring up certain societal issues too. There's always a lot of people who like to argue, to debate just to debate's sake. But I feel like sometimes that's an opportunity just to educate, an opportunity to spread wisdom too, and to so many people, we're in our little bubbles, and I think that by monks going out into the community, it kind of bursts that bubble, and it makes people more open to, again, new ideas or new way of life, or a different way of seeing the world. And so I think that both being out in the community, and being in the temple is also important too, because you get more of a formal understanding at the temples. And for me, I've talked about going to Cambodian temples and how much I love it, because that's where, like, you're surrounded by other Cambodian people and the cultures there, and how it brings joy into my heart to be able to go. But again, I think it would benefit people who are curious, or even have misunderstandings, or even bad experiences with Buddhism, or other religions. And so but for me, I'm still trying to understand the formality of certain things, like, how do I invite a monk to my house to give a Dhamma talk? Is it appropriate? Like, what are their steps? I remember inviting Bang Devi, and my dad was just like, do you have this? Do you have a pital? Do you have that? Do you have a statue of Buddha? I was like, I didn't know I needed all of that stuff. And thankfully, by this point, Bang Devi, we have developed a good relationship, and I felt okay to make mistakes, or feel inadequate. But I know that some people can't get over it. They don't want, the feeling is so uncomfortable for them, so they just avoid it altogether. And so, my interest in learning about all of these traditions of ours is also kind of to spread the knowledge to other lay people too. Like, it was actually brought up, like, how do I speak to a monk the other day? And for me, it's just getting that message out of, like, yeah, they're like humans too. They are humans. And sure, they're formal ways, but they exude compassion and forgiveness. And our elders might scold us, but a monk would not do that to you. There's so many, at least I feel like within our community, there's so much misunderstanding, that I hope that we can spread the message out a little bit better, because once I developed the right view of Buddhism, or the right view of just my perception of life in general, things became more clear to me. And that's when I had the capacity to even develop compassion and develop wisdom as well. And because of that, I've been able to live my life a little bit more peaceful than before. But again, it's only through my own desire. And I debate like how much do I push it on other people, but I only bring it up if people ask me, is where I'm at right now. But I always encourage people, don't be afraid to go to the temple, don't be afraid to go to the monks, or to talk to monks. Don't be afraid, don't be intimidated, and it'll feel uncomfortable, but you'll eventually you'll get so much more out of it than just hiding.
Thank you for sharing. Just try it. I mean, we monks should be more exposed to the community. That's how I felt when I come to stay here in America. I felt that we Cambodian monks have not exposed much to the community, so that's why they don't really know Cambodian community here. And so I try myself to get exposed to the community, and there were a lot of questions raised to me from the Cambodian community. They said they never have monks to answer their questions, and I felt so sad that we Cambodian monks should have done something better for our community, at least to expose ourselves, open the floors for them to come and ask questions about what they have, why they come to the temple, why they pay respect to the Buddha, why they respect the monk, why they bow down, what should they talk to the monk, why the monk should be offered with alms and donation and things like that, and they said, for the rest of my life here since I born here, I never had a chance to ask a question to Cambodian monks. One thing is the language barrier. Another thing, even though they speak Khmer, but they don't have, the convenience to talk to the monk, because some people just, get them offended that, okay, you shouldn't talk this way to the monk. It is bab, just like you said, right? Bab, you talk this way, is bab, 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 bab. So I felt like, okay, I shouldn't go to the temple. I shouldn't talk to the monk, even I meet the monks on the road, So this is like a barrier, so to prevent our community to approach to the monks to get good communication with their monks, it is so sad. And I truly, encourage people, if you happen to watch the show, please feel free to come to the temple and expose yourself to the monks and get in a simple conversation. And as we want to encourage that we monks is a simple human being. I mean, even our way of life is different, but the communication shouldn't be the barrier, that which separate us from the community, from getting involved in the community. So we will miss a lot of chance, opportunity to understand Buddhism and also to do good work for the community if we continue to have that idea of inconvenience talking to the monk. So that's why when we talk about his quote, I truly encourage people that monk also try to reach to the people to have them have convenience, talking to the monks in doing any social services to help our community, because this also been our purpose, to have people relieve from suffering according to the Buddha's way. So anyway, we have been talking a lot already, and maybe we're gonna end the live show soon. But before that, I would like to move back to Most Honorable Dr. Yon Sijit to give the last message about today's theme that we were discussing throughout this 1 hour live show, about the living message of peace from Most Honorable Dr. Ko Sananda, the great Cambodian monk who once lived in this earth and has contributed a lot to the Cambodian community, the Cambodian Buddhism, and also to the world peace. So what is your message to our fellow followers?
I would like to share one of his statements when he started his work along the Thai-Cambodian border. And I used to read this message at Harvard University when I presented my paper, the final paper. He said, right now, Cambodian people have nothing left except forgiveness and compassion. To end the conflict, it has to begin with what is right and what is wrong, not who is right and who is wrong. He said it on the Thai border in June 7, 1980 at Sa Kaeo province, Thailand, the Cambodian Thai border refugee camp. And Mahakosananda is a role model for us as not as a peace-loving people, but for all the people who love peace, and for those who desire for a happiness in the day-to-day life. So I think we can use his teaching as a part for our practice from the individual level to the community and to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both Venerable Doctor, for sharing a great quote from Venerable Mahako Sananda. Now let me move to Venerable Kaspa on camera from Dong, Cambodia. What is your last message?
My last message is, as a young generation, as monks, we have so much to do, to be equipped with wisdom, with compassion, with practice, with meditation, if we have a true motivation to help ourselves and to help our community. So let me read his quote that I like the most, the Dharmayana, step by step, moment by moment, it is comprehensible and can be understood by anyone. Dharmayana is kinds of Buddhism I love, and loving kindness is the way for peace. So that's all from me.
Thank you so much for your message. And Jenny, what's your last message? Please unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. I'd also like to quote something from Mahagasananda as well. And I spoke earlier about my journey to find who I am as a Cambodian person. And I had mentioned that he actually explains it in this book step by step. North America is a melting pot. We Cambodians have been here for just one generation. In recent years, we have also resettled in Europe, Australia, and throughout Asia. As we rebuild our lives in new lands, and as we become part of new societies, it is important for us also to preserve our cultural identity. Without our culture, we will become lost and confused like fish out of water. Cambodians have a precious heritage. The richness of Cambodian culture includes many gifts. Cambodians are fearless because they can overcome greed, anger, and delusion. Cambodians are humble, courteous, and noble. Cambodians are grateful to their mothers, fathers, to their leaders, to their land, and to the whole world. Cambodians keep the 5 moral precepts, the constitution of humanity, and the Dhamma of goodness. Cambodians have mindfulness and clear comprehension as their protectors. Cambodians practice loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Cambodians have patience. They can bear great difficulties, suffering, and hardships. Cambodians forgive and forget the wrongs of other people. They learn from the lessons of the past. They use the present to build the future. Cambodians are truthful and well-behaved. They follow the middle path. Cambodians are soft and smiling. Their speech is truthful, loving, and practical, clear, vibrant, and sweet. Their speech has the power to free the mind from anxiety, to purify the mind from delusion, and to make the mind strong. Cambodians have the tradition of solidarity, united by Buddhism and their love of Dhamma. When we are in the river, we flow with the river, zigzag, but we cannot forget our boat, which is our tradition. As Buddhas all, may the Cambodian people be peacemakers. In the tradition of our sacred land, may we celebrate unity, loving kindness, and peace with our deepest gratitude. And this quote, or this message from him, was what finally made me proud to be Cambodian and made me finally understand the importance of keeping our traditions alive. And that part of our traditions is practicing the Buddha Dhamma.
Thank you so much. That was very wonderful. Thank you so much. I also would conclude the session today by reading one page of his quote. On one occasion, a newspaper reporter questioned Mahako Sananda, "In your long and eventual life, you must have had some special moments." "Yes," Kosananda responded. "Which ones?" the reporter questioned. "Every moment," Kosananda answered. I hope that we can be truly happy each and every moment of our lives, just like what he said. And let me read his last quote at the very last page of the book, The Buddha of the Battlefield. There can be no peace with landmines. We pray for peace and a world free of landmines. And we know there can be no peace with landmines. But to make peace in the world, we must have peace in our own minds. To make peace, we must remove the landmines in our own hearts, which keep us from making peace. The landmines in our heart are hatred, greed, and delusion. We can oppose hatred with loving kindness, greed with generosity, and delusion with wisdom. Peacemaking begins with us. Peacemaking requires compassion. It requires the skill of listening. As we listen to the fear of the people making, shelling, placing, and justifying landmines, they will come to trust us. They will begin to listen to us when we tell them about the great suffering caused by landmines. Only when we listen to others will they listen to us. We must also listen to those disabled by mines. We must listen with compassion, not pity. We must cultivate loving kindness for our disabled brothers and sisters, as a mother loves and protects her newborn baby. For the world is our house, and all of its people are our brothers and sisters. To love, protect, and serve them is our duty. When we remove the minds from our heart and make our home safe for someone, it is as if we were protecting our brother, our sister, our parents, and our children. We must extend great gratitude to the miners of Cambodia and the world who are making our home safer for all of our human family. Peacemaking requires mindfulness. We must decide that making peace is more important than producing, selling, justifying, or using minds. We must decide to observe the first precept of non-killing and not depriving others being of life. Peacemaking requires selflessness. Peacemaking requires selflessness. To make peace, the skills of teamwork and cooperation are essential. To end the devastation caused by landmines, we must all work together in Cambodia, as well as with our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan, Rwanda, former Yugoslavia, and every country throughout the world. Peacemaking requires wisdom. Peace is a path that is chosen consciously. It is not an aimless wandering, but a step-by-step journey. We pray that wisdom and compassion will be present in the deliberations of the governments. We peacemakers of all faiths, we commit ourselves to making peace every day. We will continue to sharpen our skills for peace. We will continue to pray, walk, and act for peace and for a world free of landmines here and in every corner of the world. May all beings be free from fear. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be well and peace. Thank you so much. Last but not least, I would like to thank you again for Most Venerable Dr. Yon Sinjit and Venerable Kasapak Hon Kamara from Cambodia and Sister Jenny from Sierra Washington State for spending time contributing the experience and knowledge and ideas about the His Holiness Venerable Mahako Sananda, reflection about his experience, his works, and also his compassion, his great living message that had been passed down to us as a younger generation, as a Cambodian monks and Cambodian community. We will live to his message. I hope throughout this 1.5 live show discussion, it will give some inspiration and also some more knowledge about Most Venerable Mahako Sananda to our community and also to the community throughout the world. May all be peaceful and be happy by the power of this Dhammatana. And we would also like to apologize for any mistake that might happen during our discussion through to the lack of our knowledge. And again, I also would like to share merit to all beings in the whole universe and also to all friends who have been following our live show. May all be happy and peaceful. Thank you so much. Goodbye.